Welcome to the Pastor Studio podcast. Before we get into today's episode, we have an announcement for you. The Kabwata Baptist Church Ladies Ministry will be hosting a seminar on the 18th of July, 2020. Dr. Vadi Bokkam of the African Christian University will be preaching on the topic of Serving God During the COVID-19 Era. The seminar will begin at 2 p.m. and will be broadcast live on the Biblical Christianity YouTube and Facebook pages, so be sure to like and subscribe so that you do not miss out on this fantastic seminar. For any questions, feel free to tweet at us or send a message on Facebook. All the details will be in the description. Now, for today's episode of the Pastor Studio.
It is amazing how many times that we make promises that ultimately we do not intend to fulfill, or we make threats that we do not intend to fulfill. I have found that the people that are often guilty of this are parents with respect to children. You find that perhaps a child is misbehaving and a father will say to that child that stop doing what you're doing, I will buy you an ice cream. The child stops misbehaving, and when the child then later on says to dad, my ice cream, the father goes, hey, I don't have money, and then just moves away. Or sometimes it's a mother who's trying to get a child to have a bath, and the child is deliberately keeping away from the bathtub, and finally the mother says, if you don't bath, no supper. Well, by the time it is supper time, who do you see at the table? The child who has not bathed. And the mother may say, you, next time. And that's it. The children in the process begin to think that words don't matter. Promises don't matter. The words produced in threats are simply empty words. And that's wrong, because words matter. Promises matter. Threats matter. The Bible in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 1 to verse 5 puts it this way. My son, if you are snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself, for you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten, and plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep, and your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of your hunter. What is the Bible telling us here? What it is saying is that when you have made a promise to your neighbor, or in this case, even to your child, take your promise seriously. And when you discover that you are unable to fulfill your promise, don't wait until your neighbor comes to inquire about it. Rush to your neighbor and immediately begin to plead, because you are unable to fulfill the promise that you made. And what that does, it shows your neighbor how serious you are with your words. You made a promise. Circumstances make it difficult for you to fulfill your promise. You rush there in order to plead that perhaps your promise might be moved onto another time, and hopefully your neighbor will understand. It is the way in which godly individuals are supposed to go, rather than simply take advantage of the fact that you are a father and consequently you just say to your child, I don't have money. That's wrong. Words have meaning. In fact, that's what true godliness is all about. The God of heaven made a promise to us in his own covenant to save us from sin. It was going to cost his own dear son. And what did he do? Did he back out when his son was in Gethsemane pleading with him that the cup of suffering should be taken away from him. No, he didn't. He made a promise. He was going to make good that promise, and consequently, his own son finally paid dearly by his death on the cross. It is because our God is a faithful God. He will not deny himself. Well, those of us who are Christians should be exactly the same in reflecting our godliness. We must therefore never make promises in a hurry. Never. If your back is against the wall and you need to borrow money, and consequently you make a promise that you will pay back by a certain day, make sure you do it. And that is the reason why, for those of us who are Christians, we must never make a promise or a threat in the emotions of the moment. We must never say to a child, if you don't do this, we will not provide this for you, just because we are angry. We must never do so. Because if we do, we must ourselves pay for it in the end. Especially because the home is a training ground for hard work, a training ground for love, and a training ground for faithfulness. By our example as parents, we must show our children that words matter. If we make a promise, let's make sure we carry it out. If we make a threat, let's make sure we carry it out, so that children learn that words truly matter. And you'll find that when they go into adulthood, when they go into the working life, when they go into marriage, they will take their promises to one another seriously. They will be real citizens in God's world and to God's glory, because we, the parents, gave a good example to them. And so, as the Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Take your words seriously.